The story starts with Jensen Ames, who is an business employee and ex-convict. He learns that the metallic mill wherein he works is shutting down and won't be paying the employees their complete wages. It truly is why the employees are protesting in the front of the enterprise. As frustration some of the employees grows, anti-insurrection police arrive there. The police are responding to even the smallest provocation with violence. Whilst Jensen sees his co-employees being crushed, he steps in and fights returned all through the technique. He's taking down a few officials with inside the chaos. Come on, by the point Jensen makes it domestic, it is already night time. He greets his spouse, after which is going upstairs to test on their infant. However, he's absolutely unaware that a masked intruder has damaged into the residence. Even as Jensen is upstairs, the crook seizes the possibility to homicide his spouse with inside the kitchen. Whilst Jensen comes returned downstairs, the man ambushes him from at the back of and knocks him subconscious earlier, then leaving the intruder locations the homicide weapon in Jensen's hand and makes a taunting shooting gesture. Together along with his gloved hand, he had framed Jensen for the crime and left the residence. By the point time the police arrived there, Jensen wakes up moments later to discover the police arresting him for his spouse's homicide. 6 months later, Jensen is transferred to Terminal Island Jail. Upon arrival, he's greeted through Protectric, who sprays him with freezing water and additionally permits any other officer to hit him. After that, the Protect escorts Jensen to a mobile dealer shared with 3 other prisoners, reason on beating him up. But whilst Ulrich returns later with inside the desire of taking part in the aftermath, he sees that Jensen is a professional fighter who has already knocked all his cellmates out bloodless. The following morning, Jensen heads to the mess corridor for breakfast. He is quietly found through prisoners and struck Gunner and Lists, who apprehend him as a former champion driving force whose record-breaking profession led to tragedy. The atmosphere all at once shifts whilst prisoners Panko and his buddy method Jensen. They initiate him through spitting on his meals and insulting him through calling him a spouse killer and child abuser. Listening to this, Jensen snaps and assaults Panko. However, earlier than the fight escalates, the guards intrude and drag him away to fulfill Claire Hennessy, who is the jail warden. In her office, Claire reveals that she knows all about Jensen's past as a phenomenal driver. She offers him a deal. She wants Jensen to take on the role of Frankenstein, who was the masked tracer in this death race. The real Frankenstein died on the operating table after his last race, but the public doesn't know this yet. This makes it easy for someone else to take his place behind the mask. Frank was a fan favorite and an iconic legend, which is why Hennessy is determined to keep his death a secret. She needs the myth of Frankenstein to live on and revive the show's ratings. Since his passing, Hennessy tells Jensen that according to the rules, the driver earns their freedom after winning 5 races. Since Frankenstein had already won 4, Jensen would only need 1 more victory to secure his release. Despite the tempting prospect of freedom, Jensen hesitates because risking his life in a deadly race isn't a decision he takes lightly. But Hennessy won't take no for an answer. She threatens him with solitary confinement to ensure that he can't reveal her secret in the prison. Now Jensen is left with no choice but to agree with the offer. Jensen is then taken to the prison's auto shop where he meets Coach and his team, the mechanics responsible for maintaining famous. That she is aware of all about Jensen's beyond as an exceptional motive force. She gives him a deal. She desires Jensen to take at the position of Frankenstein, who become the masked tracer on this death race. The actual Frankenstein died at the operating desk after his remaining race. However, the public does not recognize this, but this makes it easy for a person else to take his place at the back of the masks. Frank become a fan favorite and an iconic legend. That's why Hennessy is decided to preserve his death a mystery. She wishes the parable of Frankenstein to stay on and revive the show's rankings. For the reason that his passing, Hennessy tells Jensen that in accordance to the guidelines, a motive force earns their freedom after prevailing 5 races. For the reason that Frankenstein had already gained 4, Jensen might best want 1 extra victory to steady his launch. In spite of the tempting prospect of freedom, Jensen hesitates due to the fact risking his existence in a deadly race is not a choice he is taking lightly. However, Hennessy might not take no for an answer. She threatens him with solitary confinement to make sure that he can't screen her mystery with inside the jail. Now Jensen is left without a desire, however, to trust the provide. Jensen is then taken to the jail's car store, in which he meets Edge Educate and his crew, the mechanics answerable for maintaining Frankenstein's automobile. They provide an explanation for the guidelines to Jensen. Each crew operates independently and there may be no helping every different. Jensen additionally notices a large workshop in which Hennessy has been secretly constructing something for weeks. Best to pick out few human beings, including Educate's crew and a handful of guards, recognize Jensen is the brand new Frankenstein. Hennessy's manipulate over the jail guarantees her mystery stays secure. After that, Educate introduces Jensen to his automobile. That's a closely modified Mustang V8 fastback. It is prepared with an array of offensive and protective devices. However, no ammunition is loaded on the automobile until race day to save you prisoners from trying and break out. The Educate tells Jensen that escaping isn't always an option from this hell because the jail is on an island. The best manner out is a narrow bridge which might be swarmed with police motors and helicopters on the first signal of a breakout. After getting acquainted with the automobile, Jensen joins the crew with inside the jail backyard to continue their communication. Educate explains the shape of the race that is divided into 3 ranges. With inside the first ranges, the intention is to remove as many combatants as viable. With inside the final degree, velocity is the important thing to crossing the finish line first. Every motive force is assigned a navigator who is generally a lady introduced in from the women's facility. The only exception is Joe, who makes use of a crew member as a substitute. He is infamous for transferring via female navigators so fast that it makes even the target market uncomfortable. Then a crew member list starts. Evolved briefing Jensen on the important thing drivers with inside the race, all of whom are gift with inside the backyard. There is 14K, who is a triad member and MIT graduate. Then there's Hector Grimm, who's a certified psychopath who idolizes Hennessy. After that we get added with the aid of using Slovo Pakenko, who's the Aryan brother to Chief, and Travis Colt, who's a disgraced ex-NASCAR super mega celebrity. Their communication is reduced brief whilst Joe and his group technique Jensen the insults Jensen and supply the message that this race is best among Joe and Frankenstein. Simply then a van arrives in the jail that's returning inmates from a peace region. Jensen notices something on his traditional approximately their wrists. They may be sporting GPS monitoring bracelets on their fingers. The website online triggers a consciousness to Jensen that the person who killed his spouse have been sporting one of the one's bracelets to the day of the primary race. Degree subsequently arrives. Jensen is given Frankenstein's garments, masks and even his ring to finish. The guidance is looked by myself draws return the visitors the display had lost earlier. Then the sport begins. Evolve the Educate advises Jensen to keep away from speaking to the other drivers as retaining Frankenstein's silent mystique is a part of the act, but he is allowed to take away the masks at the same time as with inside the vehicle because the home windows are made of reflected glass and Case is already in on the name of the game as they put together for the race. Jensen asks Case why she's in gaol. She exhibits that she killed a cop who turned into her very own husband. She killed him due to the fact he turned into abusive. Their communication is reduced brief because the race begins. The primary lap is not too violent as weapons might not pop till the second of the 3 laps. Nevertheless, the drivers do their first straight to shove every different off the music to Case's know-how of the course. Jensen manages to live neck and neck with Joe onto the front canine left to 100 feet whilst Case spots a shortcut. She guides Jensen through it, which lets in him to take the lead. As soon as the second one lap starts, Hennessy turns on the shields and guns, propped swords and shields. Now the drivers ought to steer their motors over unique manholes, hitting all 4 wheels to allow their attacking devices. Chaos erupts because the race becomes a full-scale struggle. Additionally, Hennessy UPS the stakes via way of means of activating the demise heads that are truly the lethal obstacles located strategically at the music. A driving force named Grimm makes use of them to his benefit and kills a minor driving force via way of means of slamming his vehicle into certainly considered one among the traps. He then slows Joe down via way of means of shooting oil at his vehicle and briefly knocks him lower back. However, Grimm's reign is short-lived. Soon 14K takes him out via way of means of launching a missile and forcing Grimm off the music. His vehicle crashes and Grim comes out of it. Joe finishes him off by way of means of running over. Throughout the race, Jensen manages to prompt the guns, however his system gun JY Case bravely climbs onto the hood to restoration it. However, this attracts a hail of bullets from the opposite drivers on Jensen's vehicle. Way to Jensen's sharp-fusing talents, he dodges the gunfire and Case thoroughly returns to the passenger seat. Because the race intensifies, Jensen steals a protection manhole from Colt. However, much like with the actual Frankenstein, none of his protection structures paintings at that time. The rear shield is speedy, sporting down by way of means of the bullets being fired. As thinking fast, Jensen comes up with an unstable plan. He instructs Case to unhook the napalm canister and take a seat down on his lap. Then he ejects her seat, which is now wearing the napalm, and it is fell instantly at Colt's vehicle. The napalm smashes into Colt's car and Case follows up by way of means of throwing the vehicle's lighter, igniting the napalm and placing Colt's vehicle on hearth place. With Colt removed, Jensen yet again faces Joe head-to-head. All of a sudden, Jensen notices Penco making a acquainted hand gesture. It's for the equal one the person who killed his spouse made earlier than fleeing the scene. Distracted by way of means of this vision, Jensen loses focus. Joe seizes the possibility and slams Jensen's vehicle, which forces him into final regen, while Penco claims first by way of means of the quit of the race. 3 drivers are useless and 6 stay for the subsequent degree. Again at the storage, Instruct and his crew check out the vehicle and locate no troubles with the gadgets. They may be baffled as to why the systems failed. In the course of the race, Jensen is now pissed off and suspicious. Approximately Hennessy, he confronts her after a while and accuses her of making plans the entirety from framing him for his spouse's murder, rigging the race, and the use of Penco to lure him into taking up as Frankenstein. Hennessy would not affirm his suspicions, however counters with any other danger. She suggests Jensen an image of his daughter, who is now in a foster domestic. Hennessy reminds Jensen that if he desires to see his daughter once more, he desires to play alongside in the death race sport. As Jensen is unable to do a great deal approximately Hennessy's threats, he returns to the backyard and chats with Coach. Jensen asks why Instruct would not put on a prisoner quantity, so Instruct explains that he is technically now no longer a prisoner anymore, as he certified for parole 3 years in the past, but he could not bring himself to go away this region as the out-of-doors global had modified an excessive amount of, and he favored the familiarity of the jail and its races. The Instruct also famous that he would not agree with Jensen killed his spouse later that nighttime while operating on his vehicle. Jensen spots Penco taking walks by way of means of A and comes to a decision to comply with him to his crew's pit. There Jensen is ambushed by way of means of Penco's guys. Penco lands some punches on Jensen earlier than grabbing a heavy device. My lifestyle. He intends to break Jensen's head with this heavy device, notwithstanding knowing he is beneath Hennessy's safety. However, earlier than Penco can strike, List intervenes and stabs Penco with inside the again with the pen. Seizing the instant, Jensen grabs a metal stick from the floor and makes use of it to stab one in Penco's guys. He then knocks out his captors, after which turns his attention to Penco. He begins evolved punching Penco, throwing him into close-by device and slamming him into crates. Subsequently, Penco admits that Hennessy ordered him to kill Jensen's spouse and that turned into is the person who introduced him to the residence. Simply as Jensen is ready to supply a deadly blow, Elish and every other shield arrive there and cut up the combat, pulling Jensen away. Tomorrow, simply earlier than the second level of the race starts, evolved Penco taunts Jensen once more, repeating the equal hand gesture that haunted him the night time his spouse changed into killed. This time whilst the race starts, evolved Jensen intentionally starts riding slowly and takes a tunnel to have a non-public communique with Case in the tunnel. Jensen accuses Case of likely killing the actual Frankenstein. Did you kill the vintage Frank? What he factors out the suspicious failure of the automobile's gadgets in 2 consecutive races. Whilst she hesitates to solution, Jensen threatens to eject her from the automobile if she would not respond to him. Virtually seeing this situation, confesses that she sabotaged Frank's rear weapons under Hennessy's orders. Absolutely, she changed into lured by way of means of the promise of her freedom. She insists the purpose changed into by no means to kill Frank. It changed into a twist of fate resulting from Frank's determined try and win without useful guns. Hennessy's actual aim changed into to make sure Frank misplaced so she could preserve him in gaol and make the most his fame for the display. Together along with his suspicions showed Jensen shifts gears and speeds lower back into the race. For now he ignores Joe and units his points of interest virtually on Penco clash at the tune time and again and try and pressure every different off, but neither succeeds. Jensen then takes an ambitious approach as he turns on the gun's manhole and preference to the defense gadget. This puzzles absolutely each person for the reason that his automobile's guns are installed on the front. Moments later Jensen surprises the whole crowd via way of means of spinning the automobile round and riding backward. He then shoots a barrage of gunfire on Penco's car. Once the harm is intense sufficient, Jensen turns lower back round and releases a smoke display screen. Oak makes Penco crash into a concrete barrier. After that Jensen stops his automobile, steps out and tactics Penco without hesitation. He breaks Penco's neck in cold blood and avenges his spouse. In the meantime Joe makes a decision to change out his navigator with inside the center of the race. Simply then Hennessy seizes the possibility to unveil the name of the game weapon she's been making ready for weeks. Launch the Dreadnought. It smiles, a massive closely armed tanker truck dubbed Dreadnought. The Dreadnought is terrifying and unequaled in strength. It tears via the tune, unexpectedly catching up with the racers and without delay obliterating minor competition. Its sheer length and firepower supply it any other advantage. Furthermore, it's allowed to go into homes at the course, which allows it to take a shortcut and reappear onto the front of the race. The Dreadnought methodically objectives 14K's navigator and slowly torches him earlier than the usage of chains to seize his vehicle and hearth place at it till it bursts into flames. With Handiest, Jensen and Joe closing the race, seems not possible to win without a plan. Simply then Jensen asks Lists to attach his communicator to Joe's vehicle and they comply with Shape and Alliance. Collectively they flank the Dreadnought and skillfully dodges its relentless assaults while they come upon a lure manhole. Each drivers hit it with wheels to set off the trap and pressure the Dreadnought to crash into it. With the Dreadnought disabled, the second level ends. Handiest, Jensen and Joe are now left to continue to the very last race. Later that night Joe processes Jensen in the pit. He notes that Jensen's voice suspiciously resembles Frank's. Meanwhile Hennessy and Reed determined that Jensen must be removed with inside the very last sport. The next day, simply earlier than the very last level of the race starts, all locations a bomb under Jensen's vehicle, whilst Hennessy distracts absolutely each person with a speech approximately racing being the reason, as she mentions that this may be the primary time someone wins their freedom with the fifth victory. Jensen realizes something worrying. He thinks that Hennessy has rigged the races all alongside to do away with everyone who should win a fifth time. No person has ever reached that milestone due to the structure's manipulation, which means like all the others earlier than him, he may not be allowed to win. Nowadays both Instruct has additionally heard Jensen's recognition approximately the race rigging, so he indicates Jensen an important element from a video of Grimm's loss of life. This sparks and concept in Jensen's thoughts and he asks Lists to put in a half-gallon reserve.